I'm going to be showing you how to assemble one of the dice towers. The version that I've got here is the version that also doubles as a dice case, although the general steps should be the same regardless. I've got a couple of pieces here, including this one here with the main parts of the tower, and this one here with the tray. I have this turned to the side that was facing down in the laser. You'll notice that you might have some scorch marks that show up on there. That's a natural part of the process. If you like, you can take a sanding block of some sort and come in here and sand off any of those marks before you assemble. That way you'll have a cleaner looking part, a cleaner looking product when you're done. It's not required, but I think it looks better that way myself. Let's get out one of these sanding sponges here instead. And you might want to do that on both the parts. I won't show you all of that. I'll just skip forward on the video here to where I start punching out and putting it together. Of course, the other thing that sanding does is it gives you nicer, smoother feeling wood. I don't necessarily guarantee that I do any sanding for items that you buy to assemble yourself. If you buy pre-assembled items, I do all the sanding before I put it together. But if you're buying kits to assemble yourself, I am assuming that you will do any sanding you like. I like the feel of that at this point. So now we're going to take this out and put it together. So this is the tower itself. These are the baffles that spin the dice. We will put the tray into which they fall out in a little bit. These should punch out relatively nicely here. We've got very small, like 1/4 millimeter wide bridges holding them in. So they should punch out pretty easily. For this demonstration assembly, I will be using a commonly purchasable glue here, using Elmer's Craft Bond tacky glue. Really, any sort of tacky craft glue will work just fine. If you want to get fancier, you can. When I'm assembling ones that were purchased pre-assembled, I will instead use something like Tight Bond translucent wood glue, but that's not something everyone's going to have, and it doesn't have the best dispenser, so I have to put it into a separate little dispenser. I figure you probably don't want to do that yourself, so I'm just showing you how you can put it together with this. Now, when we popped these out, you'll notice the little bridges might leave little bumps along there where they were attached to the wood. If you want to, you could take a little bit of sandpaper or even a file and file those down a little bit. They're small enough that they don't really bother me, so I'm just going to leave them as is for the time being. So you will also notice that I cut these out in a way that maintains the grain going around the box. I want to keep things that way. So I'm going to turn these over. So we have the back side facing out. It's the side that had more of the burn marks on it. I will place these baffles into their slots here. There we are. And I will go ahead and start to assemble this thing. So I'm going to put a bead of glue along here. And then bring this in here like this. Do the same thing along here. This can then come up here like this. Now this is a little bit of a tricky part. You need to get these fingers to fit into their appropriate slots as you fold this together. Now you don't necessarily need to put any glue at all on those parts because they will be entirely captured. Like that. All right, let's make sure that I've got this facing the right direction. I do. All right. Now you'll notice, and I should have pointed this out earlier, that these finger joints are actually going to be at the top of your tower. The top of your tower you can tell because there are finger joints up here as well. The bottom of it is all flat. And the reason there are those finger joints at the top is for essentially the lid of your dice case when you close the thing up. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue along here. If you want, you can also put some here. Now, if you were to get one of these pre-finished with shellac, it would then be quite important to get some glue right along the sides of these fingers here like that. This isn't pre-finished, so I'm not going to bother going through that a lot more here, but if you got this pre-finished, those spots, like this one here, on either side of this thing, are going to be the only places that you have actual wood-on-wood contact without shellac in between, and that's going to be where you get the best glue adhesion. Since glue doesn't stick as well to shellac, it'll stick a little bit, but just be careful with that. Making sure that these fingers are adjacent to those fingers. We will now put the back on. And you might need to play with it a little bit here to make sure that the fingers mate correctly. There we are. So at this point, I'm just going to get some rubber bands and put them around here. And I don't necessarily need to. This one actually went together quite snugly, so the rubber bands are probably superfluous, but you don't want to count on that. Don't want to get any glue on the outside there. So again, if I were assembling one of these for a pre-assembled purchase, I've got some specialized band clamps and stuff like that that I tend to use, but I don't want to tell anyone that you're required to get any specialized equipment for putting these things together at home, or at least as little as necessary. And that's pretty much it for the tower part. Obviously, there's one more part that goes up here. I'll come back and do that later when I put on the tray. So I'm just going to go ahead and let that cure, and we will return and put the tray and the lid on in a little while. Thank you. So the tower itself has had time for the glue to set, and now I'm going to put together the tray into which the dice land. I've already taken these out of their sheet of wood. So let's see. They're going to go like this, like this, and thence to this. We also need the Chicago screws, as they're called here. Those are going to be the hinges. I have also gone ahead and cut for myself a little sheet of wax paper. Not strictly necessary, but I find it useful to make sure that any glue that squeezes out here doesn't accidentally glue the tray to the tower itself. So I'm going to turn this over. And we're going to add some glue along here. Okay, so now at this point, I'm going to fold these up so that the finger joints mate. Let's see, there we are. Like that. this around here. And put this on here like this. Oops. The tricky part here is getting these to come through here in the clearance allowed. Now, you don't have to have the Phillips head part necessarily sticking in or sticking out. I prefer to have it sticking inside because the finished side looks a little nicer to me. However, it's a little easier to get this thing to screw together tightly if you do it the other way. If you have the Phillips head screw part out here so that you can use a screwdriver on it. So that's your choice. All right, so one thing I did not demonstrate there, but you might want to do is there is a product by Loctite called Thread Locker. And if you put a little drop of that into these, you put them together, then they will remain tightly screwed in over time. I would recommend doing that. I did not do that here in this particular instance. There is the glue for the other part of the lid. Let me just make sure that the wood grain matches here, that I don't have it turned upside down. Yeah, that's correct. So this will go in here, like so. And once again, if you want to make sure all of the joints fit nice and snug, you might want to put some rubber bands on it. Your rubber bands might break, that's fine. They're just rubber bands. All right, there we go. So I'm just gonna let that dry and come back a little later and we will see how it functions. All right, so what I happen to have near on hand is some Star Wars X-Wing dice. So if you want to store these in here, put them up in there like that. Close this. Keeps them all together. It doesn't open very easily. And then you open this up, they're right there. Go ahead and use it as a dice tower. And then you just put it back in there, close it up, take it where you want.